Namaste, people. I'm extremely happy. Today we have a dear friend, a guide, a yoga teacher, a mentor, Miss Ritu Kapur, here with me from Boston. Namaste.
Namaste, Smita.
Very happy to have you, Ritudi.
I'm
Talking
happy.
about Ritu Kapoor, she has her master's in occupational therapy from Boston University and has worked as an OT for over 25 years. She completed her first yoga teacher training in 2009 and since worked with many people to share the gift of yoga. She recently left her FT work to focus on her yoga studio in the suburbs of Boston. Also, she loves hiking and has trekked to the Everest Base Camp in Nepal and around Mount Kailash in Tibet. She considers herself a perpetual student and continues her studies in yoga, Eastern philosophy, and Indian classical music and Vedic chanting. Now, Ritu lives in Boston area with her family and teaches yoga and meditation online these days, of course, because of the pandemic. Also, you
Yes.
can visit her website, soham.org, to connect with her. Well, Ritudi, I'm very happy that you're here today.
Thank you,
And
Smita.
also, that's a great introduction.
Mm.
Now, talking about yoga itself, what is your perception of yoga? What is your idea of a yogi?
I grew up in India and moved to Boston when I was about 21. So when you grow up in India, uh, the perception of yoga is quite different than what
True.
it is in the Western world. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it was never just a physical practice. Of course, it helped me a lot immensely physically,
Mm-hmm.
but it was always a spiritual practice for me. Yogis, in my mind, growing up, were the people who left everything and went to Himalayas and
Mm-hmm.
meditated.
Mm-hmm.
But in West, yogis are anybody who can put themselves in difficult asanas. So for me, from the time I started practicing yoga later on in life, I was
Mm-hmm.
introduced to it much earlier. It
Mm-hmm.
was actually taught in our school,
Mm-hmm.
which was wonderful. But then there was a long gap for me in between.
Mm-hmm.
I always took it as a beautiful spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I teach it. That's how I practice it myself. And I teach it as something that can be done almost like meditation in motion,
Mm-hmm.
not as a workout.
Mm-hmm. Well said, very well said. Also, I read the intro. It says that you are a learner for life. That is such a statement. And that shows your humility, even though you're so established and also you've reached a level, but still you're humble enough, you're grounded to say that you are a student for life. So happy to
Which,
hear that from
yeah,
you.
of course, which we are. There's so much I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently delved into some Vedic chanting, and there's so much to learn. There's an ocean to learn, and I don't even have a drop as yet.
Wow.
There's ways to go.
Yes,
And
true.
there's such beautiful practices and philosophies coming from India,
Mm-hmm.
which are not taught to us in school growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, so there's a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. True. So tell me about your interests in hiking and trekking.
Um, well, it started many years ago, about 10, 11 years ago, when I met Swami Mahesh. I was a new yoga teacher, and at that time, he was planning to take a first group to Mount Kailash
Mm-hmm.
uh, and Mansarovar,
Mm-hmm.
Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. And I was so intrigued. I had actually never met anyone who had been to Kailash,
Mm.
and the whole when you hear about Kailash Mansarovar, it's such a beautiful, mythical, magical place. You have read about it in many,
Yes.
mythical stories that you read growing up. But I
Mm-hmm.
had never met anyone who had been there. So from that moment on, it had sparked interest, and I was like, "Ooh, I really want to do this." But
Mm-hmm.
it took me about 8 more years before that could happen.
Okay.
So I did my Kailash Yatra in 2018
Mm-hmm.
with Swami Mahesh.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so beautiful. I was just, I, I, I actually fall short of words how I
I
felt when I was
understand.
there
Yes.
in those high mountains.
Yes.
And the desire to go back was very strong. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when the friend that I had been to Kailash with, we started planning our trip to Everest Base Camp.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had never been a hiker, although I had enjoyed taking small hikes in, local mountains and all, but
Mm-hmm.
never really hiked for days.
Yeah.
And this was a multi-day hike at a very high altitude.
True.
Uh, so it required a lot of reading about it and preparing for
Exactly.
it.
So, how did the whole preparation go in terms of your yoga practice and also your preparation mentally to be strong, to have that willpower to take this on? How did the
Yeah,
whole thing go?
yeah. So, the desire was so strong, everything worked towards it.
Mm-hmm.
For me in my mind, I absolutely had to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read a lot about it. I watched videos of people who had done it, how to
Mm-hmm.
prepare. I think the physical piece was the bigger piece.
Yes.
And then, of course, the willpower has to be there. As they say on mountains, your willpower you
Yes.
is more necessary
Amplifies.
than your
Yes.
physical
True.
fitness. So, but physical fitness too, when you're hiking for 9 straight days, going steadily up in high altitude, the oxygen is going down.
Mm.
Uh, you need to prepare extremely well, which I did.
Wow.
I'd never pushed myself physically so strong. I used to
Mm-hmm.
go to the gym and
Yeah.
spend an hour doing this or that, but this required a really big push, which was wonderful. I didn't know my body was capable of that push.
Yes, I think the moment you always wanted to do it, so that kept you going. And
Absolutely.
yeah, the final destination, if I can ask you, I mean Mount Kailash, when you just looked at those mountains, can you describe that in maybe one or two words? Because I want to be there someday. I am still planning, and I can see that in your eyes. I can see that in you. So I just want to know as to how you felt when you looked at Kailash.
Ah, like I said, speechless. I had never been in such huge mountains before, and
Wow.
you're just a small little tiny thing
Yes.
there. And the fact that thousands of yogis have meditated there for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Energy is absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things that you realize after you come back home because there you're moving and you're preparing day by day.
True.
Um, it it took me a few months um, to really assimilate that experience, to
Mm-hmm.
understand it at many levels, to feel it at many levels, even after I came back.
Mm-hmm.
So even now in my mind, I often go through those days and I visualize myself walking through
Mm-hmm.
those mountains. And a part of it is called uh, the walkway of for gods, the
Mm-hmm.
valley of gods.
Yes.
And I often visualize myself walking in that space
Wow.
even now. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Mm.
Also, Rituti, did you follow a particular diet pattern during your preparations?
So I'm a vegetarian.
Okay.
I did. I had to be very careful because I was spending hours in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So I would eat, I would take a vegetarian protein shake in the morning and then take um, something healthy, but it had to be dense, like
Mm-hmm.
those sesame laddus or something.
True.
I prepared that you can eat in the gym and then keep working out
Mm-hmm.
because you can't eat a big meal, of course, before. And
Exactly.
then even after I came back home, I had to
Mm-hmm.
be very diligent about what I
Mm-hmm.
was putting in my body, which I had always been careful being a yoga teacher for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But this was another level altogether.
Yes, true. So, talking about your childhood, from when did you start, you know, acknowledging that fact that you want to be in the field of yoga and fitness, and you're inclined towards this?
So growing up, I always wanted a career that was fulfilling, but also that would be um, that would serve me well in the society that we live.
Mm-hmm.
I never ever thought that I would be a yoga teacher.
Okay.
So at in 2007, 8, when I started practicing yoga in actually in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, this feels so wonderful. And I had not done it for many years in between since I
Mm-hmm.
was a child.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I went for a shorter yoga training after I talked to the teacher who was teaching me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I didn't think I would be a yoga teacher even when I was going for the teacher training. It was meant to be for myself. I wanted
Okay.
to create a personal practice
Mm-hmm.
so I can do the right things
Mm-hmm.
when I practice it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Only after I finished the training and started teaching, um, something happened,
True.
and I was like, yes, I want to go deeper. And I went for a longer yoga teacher training after.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's the answer to your question. It wasn't something planned, it happened.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Good to hear that. Now that you're in this phase, as to you've done your teacher training and you've also taught many, many students, what is
Mhm.
your goal next?
Ah, COVID was a very interesting year for
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
True.
It was a great year to sit back and reflect
Mm-hmm.
because we weren't driving around in circles.
Mm-hmm.
Although I continued teaching, there was plenty of time to um, think more, contemplate on what's happening and what will happen.
Okay.
In some ways, I have stopped planning too much because I
Mm-hmm.
know what will happen will happen. My job is to continue doing what I'm enjoying, which is teaching yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a lot of good things are happening without even planning. So I'm open to everything that comes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like my guru, Swami Mahesh, who started teaching an online yoga teacher training program from India.
Okay.
I'm part of that program as a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that could not have happened in pre-COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm open to whatever happens. I would love to learn more about Vedas, Vedic
Mm-hmm.
chanting, and maybe teach that someday.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm a beginner myself.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what happens.
All right. Well, I would want to ask you as to some women after they reach a certain age, they don't
Yeah.
know whether to follow that proper hardcore fitness regime or
Hmm.
they go a softer, gentler way as in yoga, which is a lifestyle. So they're
Yeah.
confused between which paths to take and they want quicker results.
Hmm.
What do you have to tell to women who are reached a certain age and they want to kind of transform themselves?
Well, as Swamiji says, the golden rule is to go start from where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Do what's right for you in that time and age. Since I had been practicing yoga for many years, I was able to push my body safely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that yoga teaches you. It makes you very aware of how you're feeling. So if
Mm-hmm.
something is not right, you become aware like that,
Mm-hmm.
not after the injury has happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, you can only start where you are. Quicker results, like instant pudding, it doesn't happen in real life.
True.
You have to start slowly and make your way up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you have been generally healthy, you can go a little bit faster than somebody who has not been taking as much care of themselves before.
Mm-hmm.
So
True.
it's a very holistic attitude that you have to take.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you do matters, what you put
Mm-hmm.
in your body,
Mm-hmm.
but what you also put in your mind.
True.
As media and the thoughts and the books you read, the
Mm-hmm.
shows you watch, because that will all affect your mental and spiritual energy quite significantly.
Yes, true that. Also, coming to your everyday routine, I mean, you
Yeah.
look so calm and you look so peaceful and you have that radiant smile. How do you start your day and how do you end your day?
Good question.
Mm,
So I actually wake up, sit in the bed, and meditate for some time. I think about what is ahead and
mhm,
how the day could be positive.
mhm.
Um, I do drink a glass of warm water, as many Indians do, and start with
Yes.
my yoga practice.
Mhm.
In summers, Boston is a cold area. It's still very cold here. It was below freezing this morning.
Okay.
In summer, I take my yoga mat outside in our
Mhm,
front yard and
mhm.
do my yoga practices there, which is so beautiful, which I think in India, people can do it all year long.
Yes. True.
Facing the sun and doing your Surya Namaskar or any
Mhm,
other practice that you may have.
mhm,
Um, and nighttime yoga practices, if you have any, should be more gentle, more
mhm,
restorative. You
mhm,
could maybe do legs up the wall pose,
mhm.
meditation. Um, I actually do Indian classical music, so I like to sing late at night.
Wow.
Your
Okay.
voice is all warmed up.
Mhm,
Um, and There are times when I do Tratak meditation at night because
mhm,
when it's dark, you can hold a candle,
mhm,
and that's a beautiful meditative practice, which you can do at daytime too. But I have enjoyed doing it more at night because you
mhm.
can't see anything else.
True.
So some practices change,
Mhm,
and some stay. Being more mindful early in the
mhm,
morning and late at night is really wonderful practice to do. Those are beautiful times of the day, the dawn and dusk, and
true.
when you're going to bed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Also, drinking warm water in the morning, how significant it is for your body.
Um, I have worked with some Ayurveda teachers who are also good friends, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, it- Ayurveda emphasize a lot on drinking warm water, especially in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the teachers explained it the way that when you're trying to clean something, a dirty dish or a
Mm-hmm.
bottle, you
Mm-hmm.
always put hot water in it. The cold water is not going to take the fat, the slime away.
Correct.
So when we are putting so many things in our body to sort of cleanse it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the warm water is good. And if you're not used to it, it may feel very awkward initially, but you quickly get used to it. It feels
Correct.
good actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
True. Coming to your studio, the Soham studio, how did
Yeah.
you plan to set that up, and what were the challenges you faced in a foreign country having a yoga studio? I mean, it's pretty common right now because
Yeah.
yoga is everywhere. But
Hmm.
what were the challenges for you to kind of tell people, yes, this is authentic yoga and this is mindful yoga. So
Hmm.
this is the right path. This is the place where you need to be.
Yeah. Um, so I think the challenge for me initially was time because I was working full
Mm-hmm.
time at the time, 7 years ago, actually now 8 years ago when I started the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my husband also teaches meditation, so both of us started it together as
Wow.
a place where people can come
Mm-hmm.
and do more mindful practice of
Mm-hmm.
meditation and yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the challenges that there are too many yoga studios.
True.
So in the town where I opened, there were quite a few other studios and
Mm-hmm.
people teaching sometimes from their homes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the competition is there.
Yes.
One thing I was sure of that I will not teach anything that's called power yoga or
Mm-hmm.
hot yoga.
True.
So it took me a long time to create a sort of audience, if you may
Mm-hmm.
say, students who will keep coming back.
Mm-hmm.
It was a word of mouth. Classes were very, very small initially. I have many times taught to just one student,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes there were times when nobody showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there were other teachers who were working with me at the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And the main theme was that it was all mindful practice, whether they were teaching Kripalu yoga
Mm-hmm.
or mindfulness meditation. We had a yoga teacher who was teaching yoga to deaf students,
Mm-hmm.
and she was deaf person herself. So all kinds of yoga practices that were offered at the studio were uh, gentle, therapeutic, restorative
Mm-hmm.
in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's interesting that just in the last year, the classes were going really well, and I was planning some amazing retreats to India and even to Egypt,
Wow.
and
Okay.
all of that
Mm-hmm.
um, came crashing down
I did
as
check your
lockdown
website.
started.
Yes, it's
I
a
had to
pretty,
shut down my
yeah.
studio too
Mm-hmm.
last year. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all online, but
True.
it is what it is.
True. Exactly.
But I'm glad you asked that question because many students who started coming, some would say, thank you for not offering hot yoga because there are so many hot yoga studios
Exactly.
uh, where actually when people go, they feel very intimidated of
Mm-hmm.
yoga. That is the general culture that has become in West, that people are intimidated of yoga. And
True.
now to be scared of yoga is obviously not a good thing
Mm-hmm.
uh, because when you see the poses that are posted even on some famous magazines, it's really difficult poses. People
Yes.
often tell me that, oh, I can't touch my toes, I can't come to your yoga class, or I'm too stiff, I don't think I can do yoga. And, it takes a while to tell them, you know what, that's why you need yoga.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
True.
uh, yeah.
Well, coming to meditation, what is your idea of meditation that when you close your eyes, how do you guide people in the right direction, right path? Because there are hundreds of different kinds of meditation. So, for a beginner,
Mhm.
how should a beginner start meditation?
Um, like you said, there are many ways of
Mm-hmm.
teaching meditation. A lot of my yoga classes start with a
Mm-hmm.
short meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I think focusing on breath is fairly easy for most people.
Okay.
That's something we all do, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And there are more benefits to it because as soon as you even start thinking about the breath, it becomes deeper and slower and calmer. So that's always a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And you can slowly go deeper. You can try working with different teachers and see what works best for you, either focusing on a form or an
Mm-hmm.
image or a mantra.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe chakra meditation works for you, but that's something people would have to explore a little bit what works best for them.
Okay.
But simply focusing on the breath, sitting with your eyes closed,
Mm-hmm.
or on a beautiful day, eyes open, if you're sitting in front of a tree or a lake,
Mm-hmm.
you can simply focus on your breath, and that itself becomes a beautiful meditative practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would start.
Yes. Well
And of
said.
course, there's no end. You can
Mm-hmm.
take
True.
yourself much deeper into it.
Yes. 100%. Also, coming to the hiking part again.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to people who want to do it, but they have this um, thing of, maybe a skeptical mind as to will I be able to do it at this
Hmm.
age, or will I be able to push myself that far? How
Yeah.
how can I prepare mentally? I mean, I would be planning to go to my Mount Kailash maybe this year. I would want to do it, but I have this thing that's very intimidating as to will I be able to do it? It's
Yeah.
more in the mind.
Um, yes, it is more in the mind. And if you're determined,
Mm-hmm.
your willingness itself will carry you, propel you forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't ignore the fact that you have to prepare the body for it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, yoga was the place to start since I was already a yoga practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, beginning the walks, really long walks, or finding a place, maybe you have a hill or a mountain close to you where you can start going a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend in Chennai, and if you live in the city, there's not too many mountains that you can climb.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people there use stadium where you can just climb the stairs up and down
Mm-hmm.
many times or for hours
Yes.
sometimes. And then you do it with a backpack, 10-pound backpack, you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always ways to prepare yourself,
Okay.
even if your climate or your surroundings may not be completely appropriate for
Mm-hmm.
it. Um, when you hike or do workouts which are very long and
Mm-hmm.
tedious,
Mm-hmm.
you must stretch after.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of learned it, but and then I read more about it. After I did stairs for 3 hours one time, I couldn't move the next day. And then I
Oh.
was like, why? And then I learned that after hiking, don't just go to bed, do some stretching. So that's where yoga would be helpful, to stretch before and after,
Mm-hmm.
because you must stretch those muscles and uh, stretch them and relax them at the same
Yes.
time. So
True.
that next day you can do it all over again.
Mm-hmm. True that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So find a
Oh.
good yoga teacher close to you,
Mm-hmm.
or nowadays even far from you, because you can take a Zoom class with
Of
anybody in the
course.
world.
Yes. So what's the period or time frame you're looking at? Maybe 6 months to 1 year when we have to prepare our body and mind for this activity?
I would say if you're healthy,
Mm-hmm.
like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
yoga practitioner, 6 months would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you're not very healthy and active, it could take much longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, there's no set time period.
Correct.
It's all based on where you are at. How fit
Mm-hmm.
do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say give yourself minimum 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Coming to yoga for children. So, at what
Mhm.
age can children start? Because many parents do come to me or do come to people like us in the yoga community as to as young as maybe
Mhm.
3 years to 5 years, they want children to start meditating and getting into yoga. So, what would you recommend?
I think any age is good, as soon as they can pay attention to you or listen to you,
Mm-hmm.
or even if they're not really able to pay attention, you can teach them a tree pose
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even down dog.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were young when I became a yoga teacher, so I would do it with them. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have to understand all the logistics and philosophy
Correct.
behind it. They can
Mm-hmm.
just do the movements, and the
Mm-hmm.
movements feel so wonderful in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And children move a lot anyways.
Mm-hmm. True.
They do the upside down, they do inversions automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
True.
but to do a little bit more practice, let's do a tree, or you can give more beautiful names to the poses. Let's
Mm-hmm.
do a opening flower and then
Mm-hmm.
go down. And a lot of yoga poses have animal names. So that's
True.
always intriguing to the kids.
Or make it more
I haven't
interesting.
taught a
Mm-hmm.
lot to the kids, but whenever I have,
Mm-hmm.
they love listening to the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So you can add a story of Shiva, or add a story where they are walking in the park. Now they are a dog, and now they are a swan and cobra. So there's many wonderful ways to get them in.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So
Thank
as
you.
soon as you can start.
Sure. Also, coming to your introduction, you said you're a classical singer and you do Vedic chanting as well. I
Mhm.
will be honored and blessed to listen something from you today.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Um,
Uh,
so I'm a student of
okay.
classical Indian music. I've
Mm-hmm.
been for some years, but I um, not prepared to sing in front
It's
of others.
fine. So
So
anything of your choice.
maybe a mantra.
Sure.
I recently learned Medha Suktam from
Oh,
this book,
yes.
um,
Oh,
uh, Mantra Pushpam.
Mantra Pushpam. Yeah, even
And
I know Medha Suktam. Oh, wow.
oh,
That
you
is
do
such a
wonderful.
chant.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful chant.
Yeah.
But
True.
maybe I can sing just the beginning of it.
Sure. I'm so happy
Um,
for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared, so
Mhm.
give me one moment.
Sure.
Mm. ॐ यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया स्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासम् शरीरं मे विचर्षणम् जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरि विश्रुवम् ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
It is such a good vibration, so much positivity, Rituri. I'm so happy.
Thank
I'm
you.
super blessed to have you on my Treya platform today.
Oh,
I'm
thank you, Smita.
extremely honored. I wish you all the very best. Keep inspiring all of us and also stay safe and stay connected to everybody here because we all need you in our community.
Oh, thank you so much, Smita,
Thank
for
you.
taking the time. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.